Hello, everybody. Welcome to a video episode of Life and Life Only, and kind of a partial swapcast with Luke's English podcast. And we've got the man himself, Luke Thompson. How are you?
I'm fine. Yeah, not bad, thanks. Just kind of I've been in training for this episode because I feel like this could take a long time and there's so much to cover, and so I feel like I've needed to, I've been running up and down stairs, drinking plenty of water, trying to get a good night's sleep just to be ready for this.
Yeah, corporate water you've been drinking, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. I do.
Well,
I've got a bottle. Look at that. Just terrible. How can I talk about this film? How can I criticize the corporate world when I'm an agent of the corporate world by drinking Volvic? I don't know.
We're advertising it in the first 45 seconds. That's impressive.
Oh, fallen into the trap. It's so easy.
Never mind, we've got 2 hours to present the other side, haven't we? So
indeed.
Anyway, it's a kind of a swapcast, so welcome to your own show as well.
Oh, it's nice to be welcome to my own show. That's
I did that joke last year, but I think once a year is acceptable. Anyway, I may as well just be honest. I'm running on empty today, but we're going to power through. And when the audio goes out in about a month's time, it's going to sound like lovely and smooth.
Yeah, but you're very tired now. But let's just look at that, viewers. Look, he's almost brain dead, but not quite.
Yeah, if I worked for a corporation, though, I'd be just at the coffee machine every 10 minutes when I just chugging it down.
Yeah, you'd be full of energy. All that
wouldn't be a problem, would it?
No, you'd be full of vitality, pumped up, full of the zest for the corporate project.
Yeah, with sort of optional cocaine. Oh,
maybe.
Yes. Now, let's stick with the world's most popular drug. Actually, no, that's cocaine.
Coke.
Sorry.
Which Coke are you talking about?
Caffeine, Coca-Cola, Fanta Orange.
Oh, yes.
Old Nazi drink. We'll get to that. And anyway, listen, we've got so much to cover. Let's get in there. Let's do it.
Okay.
So, on the docket today, I'm just going to do a brief introductions. This is the corporation, that's turned into Alan, haven't I? Corporation, the pathological pursuit of profit and power. From 2003, I'm going to do my normal voice. This is a Canadian film written by a law professor called Joel Bakan. I think that's how you pronounce it. Directed by Mark Achbar and Jennifer Abbott, based on the book of the same name, which I haven't read, but I feel like I'm going to get to at some point.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about this film, it's about 2.5 hours. So we have to factor in the fact that it is edited a particular way. I'm just going to turn off my fan.
And just for maybe my viewers,
yes,
as well, or listeners. So the sort of the point of the documentary is that it's an expose. It's a critical documentary criticizing the system or the entity of the corporation, the sort of big multinational companies, and the way that they work, their history, and the way that they impact the world, and what the possible future might be of corporations. It's sort of like a critique of capitalism, but it focuses specifically on the structure of the corporation and
the monster.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know how many hours of footage they shot. It's something crazy, like 20, 30, something like that. So there's so much else, and I mean, in preparation for this, I was going to look at all the extras and everything, which I have looked at in past years, but there was just so much. It was just like this. It was too intimidating to begin with. So
yeah,
I've just watched the film, and then you kindly sent me a study guide that I'm sure we'll try and find that way of putting that in the show notes or something.
Yeah, the study guide, as far as I know, is prepared by the makers of the film as well. So that's quite useful as an accompaniment to this. Made by Robert Lewis. Not sure of his association, but I think it's the official corporation study guide.
No, it's very good, yeah, and it does just it just sort of poses questions, does it? Do you think this is presented objectively? Because this documentary is very good. I mean, I love it. It was life-changing, really. But at the same time, we can't pretend that it's totally objective. It's giving you one side. Their argument would probably be that when you're going up against the corporation's influence on our lives is so massive that when you present the other side, you don't need to present their side as well, because we're sort of fighting against this incredible propaganda and influence.
Yeah, that in terms of having a balanced argument, the corporation's side is already like fully weighed down. And so this is just a small thing that might even redress the balance by a little millimeter or something. So I mean, I suppose they're justified in presenting it in the way that they do. But it is quite interesting that they do have the voices of people from the corporate world in there, that they gave them screen time. And it's very interesting the way it's been put together, because those people don't come out of it well at all. And it's quite funny in places. I mean, overall, I find the documentary to be, well, it's incredibly powerful, but also it's quite upsetting in some places, and depressing, and terrifying as well, to be fair. What do you think? What do you feel when you watch it?
I was fishing for some sort of funny story. That's just upsetting. Sorry, I'm sorry.
More Alan Partridge references.
I can't help it. I've just watched this podcast and I love it.
Yeah,
I'll cut them all out the audio, but this is our fun version, isn't it? Okay. I felt, it is kind of depressing. But it's good that they put some humor in there, and they did try and end it on a positive note with some positive results, and what is kind of what we could do, And the idea that it's I liken it a bit like a scary boss. Like our mutual friend Rob Ager did a video years and years ago called "How to Manage Your Boss."
Yeah,
and I don't know if he made that specific point, but a scary boss gets a lot of their power from the power that we give them. And so when you sort of try and talk on a equal level to a scary boss, you might find they're not as scary. So I think it's the point with the corporation is they get their power from the fact that we essentially prop them up. And a lot of the time we don't always have a choice to do that. It's not always easy to reject corporate stuff, but they are getting their power from us. And it's one of those things where, if we turned on them, we might find they might find they don't have as much power as we think. So that's I think I'm probably like you, I'm a bit armor plated at this point. We've probably seen so many of these sort of dark documentaries that I can kind of look at it and think, well, I've seen darker stuff than this, and try and find the inspiring side of it,
Yes.
And also I think I feel better when I feel like I know a bit more about the world, even if it's dark. I'm just that kind of person. If there's a few truths there to be garnered, even if they're not going to make my feel better about the world, I feel better. I don't know, do you ever get that?
Yeah, I mean, there's the initial feeling of like when you're just looking at sort of the things the dark things, like particularly moments where you see the treatment of animals.
Oh, I hate
with the hormones that are given to cows, and I mean it's in some I couldn't look. And it's also a sort of, you feel bad yourself because you feel like you're part of it too, because you're a consumer of milk, and the feeling that you have in those situations is not just, oh, these bastards, but you also feel like kind of guilty. There's that underlying sense of guilt where you feel like I'm part of this too. Yeah, and like and you think, oh God, wait a minute, the trousers I'm wearing, I bought these from Uniqlo, and I wonder about the conditions. I don't know the conditions of the factories, but you just think, oh, what about my Converse trainers? And just you realize that it's all around you, and you're just part of it. And also things like the way that the moments when they talk about children and the way that corporations target children, you just feel so awful at the idea that these hugely powerful organizations are going for your kids, and it's just very upsetting. To imagine that. So so basically I guess the point I was making there is that it's quite an upsetting film, but yes, it's also good because you sort of think, well, everyone needs to know this. I'm glad that this documentary is out there, because people need to know about all these sorts of things.
Yeah, there's a woman. We were talking off mic about trying to remember all these names. There's obviously some famous names in this, the talking heads, but that woman with the nag factor, and she's sort of unfortunate. She's one of those people. If you remember, what was her name? Martina Hingis, the tennis player. They have this sort of what they call permy smile. I'm sure there's a technical name where they kind of look like they're smiling all the time. But when this woman was going, oh yeah, the nag factor has helped 30% more, and I just, oh god, it's so annoying. Some of these people, but I think to be perfectly honest, as I said, we're probably both quite battle hardened with documentaries. They are kind of done in that way, and one trick from documentaries that I wanted to sort of just say to the viewers / listeners, they didn't use it in this one, but you know, in documentaries where they say like so and so refused to comment. Or they have a thing where someone is chasing someone down the road, like it would have been Roger Cook in the old days. This is going back years.
Yeah,
they're chasing them down the road with a camera, and it just makes the person look really shifty, and so they are. This one doesn't use too many documentary sort of techniques, which is good. But just to say that, you know, documentaries, even though they are based on fact, they're not always, you know, there is propaganda involved. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But as you said before, fair enough. We kind of, and they don't hide it. They, in the study guide, for example, they say that, you know, this is intentional, and they've justified it to themselves by saying, look, you know, the corporation has all the airtime and has the, you know, the attention of everyone all the time. So here's a little bit of balance, and this is an argument against it. Yeah. But it's a reasonable level. I mean, it's not out and out bad faith propaganda. Yeah. I mean, it's persuasive in quite a reasonable way, I would say. And there are, as you said, there are moments of dark comedy in this.
Yes.
Normally, when you get someone from the corporate world, like the person you just mentioned, who is her name is Lucy Hughes. She was the vice president of Initiative Media, the world's largest media buying corporation. And she created the nag factor study to help corporations get kids to nag their parents to buy things.
That's it, yeah.
And she talks about it, and she's like got this smile, and she sort of like brushes it off like it's not that bad. Yeah. And she says, okay, yeah, so I'm paraphrasing, but she says, yeah, so we basically manipulate the very vulnerable developing minds of your children for our corporate profit-making interests, but it's fine.
Yeah.
She sort of she says, yeah, but you know what? It's fine because it made our people lots of money. So yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. I think the point I was, there was a point I was coming to, and I mentioned just a minute ago, was that the documentary doesn't make these people out to be evil. It doesn't use like certain music to make them, but when you hear her and other ones, they do seem to come from this other world almost. I don't mean that too lofty a way, but this
don't mean they're aliens.
World, no, but this corporate world where it's so well oiled.
Yeah.
You know, their sort of patter and everything, and the use of names as well. It's going to come to that later, but initiative and, you know, it all sounds so nice, doesn't it?
Yeah, the corporate world that they exist in, that context is a context in which all of the negative things are all brushed under the carpet and put away from view, and they're all there being positive and dynamic and, you know, raising money for their shareholders and thinking about the dividends and all this sort of thing. Lots of positive language and positive imagery, and everything's all these clean surfaces and stuff. Yes. And then you take those, the funny thing the documentary does is it takes those people out of that context and puts them into the real context of like, well, this is what is happening to the environment. This is what is happening to these people who are being essentially exploited. And, you know, look at all of the effects, the secondary effects, and how, you know, the nasty things that are happening. And then they take these people and with their corporate positive language, but it's just, it reveals it for what it is, which is kind of quite venal and quite
destructive and
ruthless, and it kind of peels back their kind of corporate curtain sort of thing to reveal the ugliness. And they don't realize that, I suppose. I mean, the there are lots of interviews, talking heads, where they're talking to the camera, and I guess they don't realize that there's like images of very sick cows on the screen while they're talking, or you see the image of something horrible, and then them talking, because in their minds they're still in this nice shiny corporate world where there are no nasty things in close proximity. So have
you ever talked about on your podcast, have we ever talked about psychopaths and sociopaths?
No, I haven't, but we should probably talk about that, because that's kind of the key concept of the film, isn't it? Psychopaths anyway, but there's a distinction between the two.
I've never been totally clear on the distinction, but if we take psychopaths, because that's what the corporation is basically diagnosed as, we'll get to that in 2 seconds. Essentially, they don't have the empathy. And I'm afraid Hollywood has kind of given the idea that a psychopath is most likely to kill somebody, like be an axe murderer. But in fact, they're not. They fit very well into big business and big politics and stuff, because they just have that ruthlessness and they don't have that empathy. So it's like they've done studies on people, and what they do is they give footage of, let's say, like a slaughterhouse or people being killed. And they've done studies, and like the pulse rate will not change. There'll be no changes in the. It's like they can just see right through it as if it's not there. And I don't know. I won't go on this tangent, but occasionally you meet people, because they say 1 in every 100 person is a psychopath. It's very scary, and 1 in every 25 is a sociopath. Not sure if those numbers are, but I have met people, and that's all I'm going to say. I've met people, and you can just see in their eyes there's a coldness, but they're not going to kill anyone. They're just going to fit very well into and do very well in certain industries. Yeah,
they'll just do what they need to do for their own self-advancement without really feeling bad about things, which is quite frightening indeed.
Definitely.
Should we talk about the concept of the documentary and the way it diagnosed? So the idea of the legal person and that sort of thing. That's a very interesting angle that they've chosen. Do you want to do that?
No, I was going to say, I'm just going to change my strategy, and I think we'll just hit 5 or 6 points, 5 or 6 of the main points, and just go with it, because I've got too many notes. So yes.
Okay.
I've just got a couple of quotes. I get to do my Michaela J. Michael impression. This lovely voiceover. The corporation. In the last 150 years, the corporation has risen to become society's dominant institution and all-pervasive. That was kind of a paraphrase, but we were talking about
I wanted a lot
of these sort of conspiracy documentaries.
Well, I wanted to point out the voice. So that's one of the things that really struck me, and I wanted to make a comparison with the Matrix. So there's several things I wanted to point out. One is the voiceover. Now the woman who does it, right? She's been used for different documentaries, but for me, she's just sort of her voice sounds like an archetypical voice, which you get in certain things. So there's the voice, and there's the Matrix, and especially the Animatrix. Have you ever seen the Animatrix?
No, I haven't. No.
Bloody hell, that's terrifying as well. So I had a similar feeling watching this documentary. So I watched it in 2000 and something when it first came out, and then I've watched it again recently for this. But I keep noticing this voice everywhere, and it's this dispassionate voice, which is also the voice you get in lots of science fiction films. And it's the voice that announces the self-destruct sequence in a big spaceship. Self-destruct sequence initiated, and total annihilation of human species imminent. It's this sort of like this kind of like dispassionate angel or goddess or something who's overseeing the last days of the human race and sort of commenting on it. And you get that feeling from this, so I did anyway, and also from the Animatrix, which seems like a very bizarre tangent, but for me there are certain crossovers. So the Animatrix is an animated sort of series of films in the Matrix universe, and the Animatrix, it's the specific episode is called The Second Renaissance, which disturbed me quite profoundly when I saw it. It's based on a graphic novel by the Wachowskis, who are the guys who came up with the film.
Yeah.
And it basically tells the story of how the machines sort of got into a war with the humans and ultimately won. It's basically the story of how artificial intelligence and robots became sentient. It's not the most original story. We've seen it from the Terminator and stuff like that. But there is kind of like a crossover. I have to read a little bit from my notes here because it's quite difficult to explain. So it's basically how non-human entities achieve legal person status. So in the Animatrix, there's a robot, and the robot actually goes to trial, and it's a seminal trial which establishes human-robot relations, and ultimately the robots become separate from the humans, and that's when eventually there's a war. So it's the idea of a non-human entity which becomes concerned with its own survival and its own propagation at the cost of human life, which is kind of ultimately the story of the Matrix. We see from the Matrix, the end result is that you just got all these individuals in pods hooked up to machines where literally their life force is being sucked out in order to feed this non-human robot consciousness or whatever it is, you know? So, you know, maybe the development of corporate-driven AI and the resulting catastrophe that happens when that AI, which is perhaps the sort of synthesis of the personality of the corporate entity, this is the sort of fictional future vision, that when that takes over the control of the human race and the humans become slaves and there is great suffering. I mean, it's horrible. But you can kind of see it. There's kind of crossovers in the sense that the corporation is a non-human entity which has legal status and which has its directives, a bit like RoboCop. You know, it's just got certain directives which drive all of its behavior, and ultimately it is only concerned with achieving those directives, which are essentially to make money for the shareholders. Everything else is secondary to that, or everything else provides for that directive, and what can happen as a result. So maybe I'm reaching there to make the connection, but I feel like there's something profoundly disturbing about the documentary, in the same way that there's something profoundly disturbing to me about the storyline of the Animatrix, and it's the same voice. So the Animatrix has got that same voice doing the commentary, doing the voiceover, and she is what is she? She is it's told by a character called the Instructor. The Instructor is a female computer program who is the main narrator, and she's like a computer program, basically. But yeah, she is like this kind of deity, this sort of digital deity that describes the history of the destruction of the human race in this kind of dispassionate voice. It's also the voice of my Bluetooth headphones as well, which is quite disturbing. Bluetooth engaged.
But it's not it's dispassionate, you're right, but it's not robotic. It's sort of sultry in a funny way.
You find it quite arousing, I feel.
I think I do, yes. I don't want to see Michaela, actually. I just want to hear her voice. Like, I don't want to burst the bubble. But no, it's it's dispassionate in the sense that, it's better that you don't have a sort of really emotional voiceover, because you're already making the arguments. Obviously, they're arguments against the corporation. So you don't want to use too many tactics, because, like I say, sort of battle-hardened documentary watchers, I think, can really see through that.
Yeah.
So there's no kind of... because if you look at it the other way, when someone like the BBC, when they made their Conspiracy Files series, I mean, again, you probably wouldn't know this unless you kind of someone alerted it to you, but all the conspiracy people who were presenting that side were all in these dark rooms, like these tiny little dark rooms, and they had this sort of crackly music.
Yes.
And then all the mainstream people, you'd see them like outside, like on a sunny day with like a massive open space behind them, and it was just like, come on, man.
Yeah, you can
Too
see
obvious.
the hand of the documentary maker a bit too close, a bit too obviously. Yeah, it's kind of that sort of thing's revealed very well. Those sorts of tactics done by sort of documentaries you see on telly, that's parodied very well by the likes of Alan Partridge and Chris Morris in The Day Today.
Definitely,
where you know there's the voiceover would be very sort of like arch or very patronizing in the sense of like, this is bad, isn't it? You know, like, and then China happened, you know, or just, I can't think of a good example of that. But yeah, it's easily parodied. But yeah, this manages to not be too heavy-handed with its subjectivity.
Yeah, definitely.
Even though it is ultimately a subjective thing.
Yes. Okay, let's get on to so we'll just try and hit the main points.
Mm-hmm.
So this corporate personhood. I just wanted to make one very quick reference to Ronald Reagan, because the more I think about this, the Reagan-Thatcher era has really defined what we are getting now. And basically, Reagan's campaign slogan was "Government is the problem." They did a very clever thing, because people always moan about the government. Okay, we moan about them now, I'm sure. What they did was to present the solution that we should deregulate everything and give businesses power. And what you were saying a minute ago about the corporate, it's the monster. Like, it's funny that some of the corporate heads liken it to an eagle, and then other ones, people against it, liken it to Godzilla. But it's this monster that you can't reason with.
Yeah, the eagle thing I found quite funny as well, because there's one guy, I can't remember who it is, but he's going, the corporation is the proud eagle soaring through the sky, and you think, but okay, but do you want that eagle in your house? Because if it will peck your eyes out and possibly eat your children if it gets the chance, and it'll shit everywhere. So is that really, is that really what you want? That's the analogy you're going to make? Okay, if it's like an eagle, but proudly soaring. Yeah, not when it's in your room.
Yeah. I think someone makes a point that it's an eagle and not a vulture. But obviously, I would say it's more like a vulture or, Godzilla or something. But, by the way, Frankenstein is the scientist, not the monster. Right,
another Alan Partridge reference.
Yes. It's like people who say tannoy when they mean public address system.
Or Hoover when they mean vacuum cleaner.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe the eagle. It's going back to the Matrix. I think it can't be an eagle, because an eagle is an actual organic, natural life form. So if it is an eagle, it's probably going to be like a robot eagle that's been programmed to just eat whatever it can, with no regard for anything. Although I suppose eagles, do they have empathy? We're getting into Alan Partridge territory. I suppose the most humane way to kill an eagle would be death by firing squad.
Yeah, death by
anyway, let's move back to more serious things.
Yes. But the idea of so the corporation is this monster that's actually run by human beings, but it's this other thing. So let's get to this personhood. We need to talk about that.
Yeah.
So apparently, I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't really researched this. I'm taking their word for a little bit. The idea was that corporate lawyers, X number of years ago, when slaves were being freed, used the idea it's the amendment, 14th Amendment, that gave slaves, it was no state can deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. But what was amazing was that the corporate lawyers managed to maneuver this, so they gave the corporation the rights of a person. And here's a crazy stat. Between 1890 and 1910, there were 307 cases brought before the courts under the 14th Amendment. 288 of them were made by corporations and only 19 by African Americans. So there's a quote here: people were killed to get rights, and by a stroke of the pen, they were given to corporations.
I don't quite understand how that happened, how they wanted to give rights. They decided, is this what happened? They're like, okay, so black people are humans too. We need to give them human rights just like everyone else. Okay. And then while we're doing it, can we make these companies the same as well? That's also like deeply wrong. That the idea that by giving like human legal status to black slaves in America, they also at the same time allowed just inanimate concepts to become legal persons as well.
To be protected. To be protected,
which is, I don't know how they did that. They kind of slipped that one in the back door somehow.
Yeah.
And so as a result, corporations are, in the eyes of the law, they are people. They can sue, they can be sued, they can own property, they can own other businesses, they can file for patents. And the people who run those companies have limited liability, which means that if, for example, that company is sued, that corporation is taken to court for doing something illegal or wrong, that it's the company, the corporation that is liable, meaning that the corporation's money that's paid, and the people who set it up aren't liable. So there's that lack of connection between the actions of the company and the people who are running it. And this structure, as argued by the documentary, defines so much of what happens, to the point where the people running this is probably going to come up later in one of your other points, but the people who are running the company can feel like they are good, reasonable people trying to do their best, but within the structure, within the directives of this machine, there's only so much they can do, because ultimately every single thing that this corporation does is to make profits. And even the CEO, who doesn't want the environment to be destroyed, his power is limited because it is in the programming, it's in the DNA of the corporation for it to destroy the environment in order to make profit. And it's very hard to unprogram. It's like the Ed 209 from RoboCop, where it's like they programmed it, but they didn't quite finish adding the source code. And so its only directive is, what would it be? Serve the public trust. And but it's like, oh, what about protect
Without
children and don't kill people? So we forgot to include that. And so we just got a psychopathic robot on the loose. And it's managed to convince us all that it's necessary and that we all need to live with it.
Yeah, to give a short version to people who don't know, essentially, if you're a sole trader, let's say you've got your own shop or you're in a partnership with one other person, you're obviously liable. You've got like a stake. You've got total skin in the game, and if you do anything wrong, you are liable. But what the corporation does is it creates this distance, which is more and more and more. So if you work at the low level of a corporation, they probably take very good care of you. You probably get very good health insurance, all that kind of thing, and your job is probably pretty secure because you are a tiny fish in a big pond. So you're not going to want to know, really. If you've got a nice job, you're not going to want to know what the end result of what's happening. And the distance is so far and getting so far that you're never going to know. So you don't have to know. And they talk about externalities, which is another kind of nice euphemism, which is basically when the third party gets shafted as a result of a transaction that they weren't involved in. And another, while we were talking about analogies with eagles and monsters, I've got here, the corporation is an externalizing machine, just as a shark is a killing machine. And although Jaws is one of my favorite films, it did present the idea that a shark goes after people in the sense that it's almost like it's got a mind, like it's, oh, there's a human, I'm going to eat it. The reality is that a shark goes mostly by smell, and it's just it's like you can't reason with a shark. You can't say, oh, Mr. Shark, you've just killed lots of people. That's the point. I think the shark is a good comparison because you can't reason with it. That's the point. It's out of control. But it's weird. It's almost as if a shark was controlled by lots of humans, but they can't actually control it. It's weird.
Well, they created the shark, and then they let it go, and then they realized they hadn't. It's got to be a robot shark. Sorry, because it's a synthetic thing created by people.
Yeah.
So they created this synthetic shark, but they forgot to finish the programming, and they forgot to add different code in there to stop it eating children.
Yeah.
And so the shark's in the water. Hey, it swims really well. It's really efficient. It does it is what it is really, really well. Oh yeah, but look, it's going to swim to the beach and just eat all the children. And there's like nothing we can do about it because its sense of smell is so good. What can we do? Yeah.
But as they said in Jaws, it's been doing the same thing for millions of years. So a corporation, presumably, if nothing is done, it will just carry on doing what it does, for however long it's,
Yeah, and
until there's some sort of backlash.
until either that or until I don't, I'm getting into the Matrix again. I don't know. The Matrix is a weird film, but it presents a very bleak end game, which is where I suppose the corporation ultimately has decided the most efficient way to continue is to just literally suck the electricity out of people. It's not even, and just feed them this simulation that they think they're living in, that they want to live in, as well, because the steak tastes so good.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in reality, everyone is in individual pods and they're directly locked into the internet, and they're literally, the electromagnetic life force is being sucked out in order to power the machines.
Yeah.
Dark, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very dark. But as you said, at the end of the documentary, they do kind of end on a positive note.
Yeah.
I was going to say this at the end, but there is actually a sequel as well called The New Corporation. I think he called it something like The Unfortunate Sequel, because he was hoping he didn't have to make a sequel. But
yeah, I've got it open here.
It updates it to the social media age, and if anything, it's getting worse. But again, I don't want to be too negative. But
yeah, sorry for sort of scaring everyone. Myself mostly, probably.
Yeah, I'm even more terrified than I was about half an hour ago when I logged on. So go on, tell us about the sequel.
Well, yeah, the sequel is just called the Unfortunately Necessary Sequel from 2020.
That's it.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right. The documentary, the original one, does have a positive note at the end, which is just the idea that that by educating people and by basically trying to prevent all of these things from just being normalized, that somehow we can kind of change, like re-establish an equal playing field again, in some way.
There's even a quote, something about never underestimate the power of the people. But of course, it's all about, I don't know if I ever told you this, but when I watch documentaries like this, part of me just does say, because I don't have kids, it's just saying, I just need to become an activist,
Yeah.
But I was talking, I can't remember who I was talking to last night or whenever it was. My life just... podcasting, meetup groups, teaching, life coaching, it all just melds into one. I've completely forgotten what I've said to who. But I was saying that I've actually reasoned over a number of years that the best thing I can do is put out podcasts like Life and Life Only, and just try and plant some seeds in my teaching and my life coaching and my meetup group and everything.
Yeah,
I don't know why I was even
I agree. I think it's a good thing that we're talking about it.
Yeah. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit here, because what they do is they make a diagnosis of the corporation as a psychopath, and they go through each section, and then they go for at the end of each section there's something from what's it called, the Manual of Mental Disorders. But what we'll do instead, I'll fast forward and I'll just go through all of them. So there's only 6. So it's callous unconcern for the feelings of others, incapacity to maintain enduring relationships, reckless disregard for the safety of others, deceitfulness, repeated lying and conning others for profit, incapacity to experience guilt, and failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviours.
These are the criteria that define a psychopath. After psychological testing, if these criteria are met, it's like rubber stamped psychopath.
Yeah, you're a rubber stamped psychopath. And like I was saying earlier, you're very, very unlikely to kill anyone. You're more than likely to use the 5th one, I think, is the key one, incapacity to experience guilt. You are likely to use that to major advantage in life or in your career. Yeah.
If you're a psychopath.
Yeah. So that was one of the big things of when I first watched this, which was soon after it came out, I think. It came out in 2003, isn't it? Was the thing about the corporation, the distance and the lack of liability, and then this thing about diagnosing it as something that has no empathy and no feelings. Right, let's talk about sweatshops. Yeah, just presenting that everyone's
hot and uncomfortable, aren't they?
I know. Yeah, like you were saying earlier. I mean, it's no joke to say that, unfortunately we are all kind of culpable and liable. But I argue that it's very, very difficult not to be that nowadays. The way things are set up, the way that virtually everything you buy is from China, and we don't know how it's created. And, I do genuinely have a conscience about this. It's just that, like I say, I've decided that it's the best thing I can do is create podcasts like this and create discussions like this, and not sit at home feeling guilty for every way that I'm culpable, because I do my best. I genuinely do my best to make choices which don't sort of perpetuate this. Anyway, so one of the main things, there's a guy, again, unfortunately I don't have his name, but the guy who investigates sweatshops. So just to give a couple of examples, he shows us a T-shirt that retails for $14.99, and the women were paid 3 cents. And then there's another one, $178, paid 74 cents. And I put in my notes here, markup is a great example of how greed is so tempting. Because what is a reasonable markup? Someone who owns a business will say, I've got overheads, and I get that. It can't be a one-to-one thing. You can't charge the same thing that it costs to produce, because you've got to make a profit. But what is a reasonable markup? 200%, 2,000%. I haven't done the maths here, but $178.74. I don't know what the markup of that, but that's in the thousands. Really, it's incredible. So, is there a limit to human greed? Is it just too tempting if you're a business owner and you can get away with it?
I don't think so. I think I wonder if it even fits into the same category as like addictive, compulsive behavior, where if you take an individual who has got into an addictive pattern of behavior where they're addicted to substances or something, and you read about this in the rock and roll biographies and all the rest of it, about people who they get to a point where they just are taking so much or drinking so much, and it's like oblivion levels, and the only thing that stops it is like either their death or some huge what's the word for it, intervention. But maybe it's a similar thing that essentially these people are completely addicted to the acquisition of wealth. I mean, it's like the Wolf of Wall Street, that film, which is where Jordan Belfort, and he says that he wasn't addicted to the drugs or the women, it was the money that was the junk that they were addicted to, and the acquisition of it, so much more than they could need, and it just gets into really weird proportions where there's never enough. It's never enough. It's filling some sort of hole, some psychological hole.
You're right, yeah.
So maybe there isn't a limit to it.
Yeah, there probably isn't, you're right. And I'm sure there are personality types. I'm sure Jordan Belfort is some sort of personality type. And it's probably that plus, is that classic scene with, who is it, Matthew McConaughey, and that is just, for me, that's a classic.
The chest thumping scene.
Yeah, classic movie scene of because Leonardo DiCaprio, he says, "You want a drink?" and he says, "Oh, just some water," and he looks at him like. So it's a kind of, and so presumably when you enter a corporation and you go some way up the ladder, there's so many rules, and probably ruthlessness is one of them. And that if you're the guy with the conscience, you're the weirdo with the conscience almost. If you're on Wall Street is a perfect example. Because I've sort of read a lot and seen a lot about Wall Street, and it, and even down to the cocaine aspect of it and the heavy drinking. It's just when you're in that culture, it's very, very difficult. I'm sure.
Yeah, peer pressure.
Of course,
you've got to be extraordinarily independently minded, and if you are, then you're not gonna fit in. So
they're going to kick you out at some point.
Yeah, you'll be kicked out either physically or just sort of culturally or mentally or whatever. It's almost impossible to operate in that environment unless you become part of that environment, in every way. So it's weird the way that these sorts of cultures happen and maintain themselves. Yeah.
And I mean, I was getting angry at certain points in this documentary, and I kind of contained myself, and I thought, well, I'll take it out on, when we do the podcast. I'm not going to get angry now, but I was getting extremely irritated. And the guy from, I think it's the Fraser Institute, the Market Solutions, you and I were talking about this, and I was getting angry before we started the recording, wasn't I?
Mm.
I mean, let me quote what he says. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I'm paraphrasing it, but people in poor countries starving to death, they only have their low-cost labour to offer. And then he goes, they wave a flag saying, come and hire me. I'll work for 10 cents an hour because that will buy us the rice we need not to starve. Come and rescue us. Okay, which is bad enough, okay? The idea that these people are waving a flag and saying, yeah, I want to work for 10 cents an hour. Yeah, I really want to. That's going to be great because all I want in life is enough rice so I don't starve. I don't deserve anything else. All I need, because I'm a simple poor person.
Yeah. It's incredibly insulting to those people. Doesn't he also say the only thing of value that these people have is their cheap labor that they can offer? That's like how insulting is that to these people, that literally that's the only value that they have to offer to the world, that they're so pathetic and weak and unimportant and pointless that the only thing they have of value is that.
Yes.
So he sees them only in terms of their sort of their labor value.
Yeah, they're a human resource.
Yeah.
That will work. It's basically desperate enough to work for an insultingly low amount of money.
So human life is only valuable in the sense that it can provide cheap labor.
Yeah. But Luke, it gets better. This is Mr. Fraser Institute. I've called him think tank guy.
Yeah.
When wages get too high and you've used up all the desperate people and they're all plump and healthy and wealthy, so apparently they get fat as well on 10 cents an hour and enough rice to avoid starving. Let's move on to the next desperate lot and raise their level up. Oh, what a hero. Takes the desperate people, exploits them, spits them out, and then gets a load of other desperate people and raises their level. Because all these people, they're waving a flag. They've gone down to 8 cents an hour. And Mr. Fraser Institute swoops in like an eagle, in fact. And
or a vulture.
Yeah, or a vulture, yeah.
A digital vulture.
Yeah. And I wanted to just say a quick thing about the other thing is about company names. These companies have the power to create names that sound lovely. So Nike, for example, is the Greek goddess of victory.
Yeah.
The company that's named after the Brazilian rainforest, who I'm not going to mention because I refuse to mention them on any of my podcasts. Again, they've chosen a name which they've got the power to choose that name. And if you think, Jeff Bezos is a hero, then research what goes on in some of his factories. There's that clip from the Davos Institute. I think they're talking about that company where the employees wear diapers because they're not allowed. They shit into diapers because they're not allowed toilet breaks. Steve Jobs as well. Apple factories in China have suicide nets, just in case they want to commit suicide. Okay, there is an argument. Let's be fair. There is an argument for saying that the CEO, and then one of the CEOs makes an argument, he doesn't have power over everything. Okay, there is an element that's out of his control.
It's the Bridgestone, the tire making company. That guy. It.
Yeah. But I'm sure if Steve Jobs had really cared, I'm sure he could have gone to China and done something about that. So, just to say to the viewer, before you hold up Jeff Bezos as this really cool guy who's gone to space and everything, think about, do some research. It's horrendous. And then we find out time is factored in these factories into 10,000ths of a second. They've got 6.6 minutes to make a shirt. So not only are they 10 cents an hour, but it's like they probably got someone up their arse the whole time.
Yeah. And of course,
horrendous.
because there are so many people who are in such levels of poverty that if that person doesn't make the shirts at the required speed, they can be easily replaced by someone else from the village or from the next town or whatever. I suppose,
they just have to look outside and see who else is waving a flag saying "Rescue me," don't they?
Yeah. On the point of Jeff Bezos going into space, never has space travel been less cool than it is now.
Yeah.
And
William Shatner, that was cool.
when he went into space.
Yeah.
Oh, he was. They sent him into space as well, right?
I don't know.
I don't know what happened with William Shatner.
I just know he went into space. That was.
He went into space. Yeah, fair enough.
Shatner, so.
But like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and I don't know, just sending their big phallic rockets up into the sky.
Phallic rockets.
Just like one of them looks extremely phallic. It's like, really, this is like the most extreme middle-aged guy with a Ferrari type behavior I've ever seen.
Yeah,
where it's like, you're not content with a supercar and a big house. You've got to also fire a huge metal cock into the air as well for the world to see. And like, there was a time when going into space was cool.
Yeah,
and it's like they've totally spoiled that.
That's the thing. I don't know anything about the guy. I know a little bit. I mean, I know Elon Musk has got just a car crash of a personal life. I know that much.
Really.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't know much about Jeff Bezos. But I'm saying the idea is that the public seem to automatically put them up as a hero, and it is because of, in a subconscious way, it's because of how much money they got. Because there's so much propaganda pumped to us to aspire to be more beautiful or richer than we are. Yeah. So it's a bit complicated, but in a roundabout way, that's what it is. But just don't hail these people as heroes, because they're not heroes. I'm sorry.
I suppose there's the sense that there's the connection to scientific progress and the idea that they are the Star Trek idealism of, like, we're going to explore new opportunities and take the human race to new levels of achievement. There's that, which fair enough. I'm not totally against it, but I mean,
they're not all bad. I'm saying, but just saying it's clear cut that they're all heroes and we also think they're really cool. That's what I'm going against.
Yeah, I don't expect me to think that they're super cool guys. I don't think they are really. It's like Richard Branson. It's like, okay, yeah, well done. You've crashed your balloon into the water. Like, well done. It doesn't make your company any better than it. It's a marketing thing. It's blatantly obvious. They're just trying to establish a cool image that we then want to be associated with. It's like any sort of magazine advertising that you see, where you open some men's magazine, and there's a pic. It's just basically, let's just put these two things together, and then our product will be associated with that thing. And then that'll just raise the value of it. So they're selling a watch, and so the advert will be a runway with a fighter jet on the runway, and then in the foreground there's a watch lying on the floor. So it's like, I see, fighter jet, a precision thing, like incredibly powerful and precision designed and all this sort of thing, and flown by very brave Tom Cruise type guys. And so we just put the watch on the floor next to it, and it's like, the watch is the same. See, they're next to each other. See, same thing. Yeah. And then you think, if I buy this watch, then I'll just acquire all of the things that we associate with the fighter jet, and I'll be the brave Tom Cruise type guy.
That's it. It's associations, and some are subtle, some are not subtle. But if you put them all together, that's what I got from this. If we talk about corporations and propaganda and advertising, it's billions of dollars, and it's just pummeling us with obvious sort of signaling, but also very, very subtle signaling.
Yeah.
And all I can really say, I mean, I think my listeners, viewers in this case, and I'm sure yours as well, they realize a lot of this already, but I bet there's loads of the public that just simply have no idea about any of this. And that's scary in itself.
Yeah.
I don't know the numbers, obviously, but
when you get to the point where we just lose connection with reality, and where every single image and every single thing that we observe and consume has been designed to manipulate us. And there's a big mental health problem in the world, where there's lots of depression and the rest of it. It's because our feelings are constantly being squeezed and pushed this way and that way. Companies have worked out that the best way to advertise their product is to advertise a feeling.
Yes.
So every advert that we see, which is on TV, and everything that you see when you're out and about in the street, all the images, it's designed to make you feel a certain way. Yeah. And so, your feelings are being pulled and pushed and this way and that way. And also they often will trade on feelings of inadequacy, and you'll just feel like, they make you feel inadequate while at the same time proposing the solution to it, which is, this new skin cream, new miracle snake oil or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you can only spend so much time looking at this, because it does get too depressing but once you understand that it's there, I don't think you need to keep investigating it. You know what I mean? Once you know that when you go out of your house, and go if you walked for an hour, there'd probably be 200 bits of advertising and propaganda that you may not even have any idea of. That's all you need to know, really, isn't it? You have to be aware of that.
Actually, now that I'm aware of that sort of thing, I take a weird enjoyment in making fun of adverts that I see. Right, like I actually, my brother and I wanted to do a podcast a while ago called Ad Nauseum. I think probably the name's already been taken.
Very good, yeah.
Where we just basically make fun of adverts that we've seen. And just, it's so easy to do. You just take a picture or some advert and you can just pick it apart. Like that, going back to the watch left on the runway. It's like, why is the pilot, he's dropped his watch. He's dropped his watch on the runway. If he's dropped his watch, what kind of pilot is he? Anyway, it's quite easy to kind of satirize those sorts of things.
That's a great idea, though. Yeah.
If
I put out a podcast next week called Ad Nauseum, I'm really sorry, Luke. It's a tribute. Okay.
But also, I should say that here we are, kind of, I suppose, almost. Some people might say moaning and stuff like that, and criticizing. The tricky thing is that what is the alternative? What's the alternative? We're criticizing and stuff, but what are we suggesting? And people who don't agree with us, that don't agree with any kind of criticism of the world as it is, will immediately start jumping to conclusions and saying that what, you're suggesting this instead, you're suggesting that instead. And it's the danger, the sort of danger of even talking about it, is that you immediately get a lot of pushback, and people assume that you're proposing other systems which are, which have been proven to be damaging and terrible as well. So, it's a tricky thing to talk about.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because what I would call it is an allergic reaction. And I get, you get this with conspiracies as well. When you even just consider that something might have involved some conspiracy, because I used to work with activists in London. We'd have documentary screenings, and people would just get so angry. But you could feel like it was more of an allergic thing. And again, that's what propaganda does. It creates. I wouldn't say it creates you. No, that's wrong. But it puts so many messages into you that when you get something against it, you have an allergic reaction. That's what it is. And you're right. Yeah, there's the pushback you're talking about. I think it's kind of that, because we are all very conditioned, and it's not because we're stupid. It's just because we're bombarded by it. And I don't want to depress anyone. I'm glad that we're at least keeping this conversation light to some extent.
Yeah.
But, I want people to watch this documentary and hopefully listen to it and be inspired to just be more aware. You don't have to go out on the street and become a protester, but just share it with people, because it's amazing how word of mouth spreads, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess one thing that people say is stuff like, oh yeah, but like corporations have brought us these wonderful things. Like, for example, the iPhone is amazing. I mean, there's no question. It's an incredible thing. And it's wonderful. I have an iPhone, and it is amazing. It does bring lots of things to my life. But then you kind of think, but what are on balance, like how much of that amazingness do I need versus how much people at the other end of the process are like, the conditions that they're living in, like small gains here can be large losses in other places. I don't know. I'm not suggesting proposing a whole new system or anything. It's just a certain extra level of responsibility, or maybe a bit more care or awareness. But again, I'm not, it's hard to talk about it without feeling like a hypocrite, because here I am with a flipping iPhone. Oh, it's got, but Anthony, it's covered by this. I've got a phone. What do you call this thing? I can't remember. A cover. a phone cover on it, which is made from recycled material. So,
there you go.
So there you go. I'm fine, aren't I?
On balance, you're fine. Yeah.
The little rubber plastic cover thing is from recycled material. So there you go. I'm completely guilt free, and I can just walk down the street with a happy skip in my step now.
Yeah.
I know irony.
No, you're joking, but I know what you mean. There is some truth to that. But I think, again, if I want to give a message to our viewers or listeners, is just try and make those little changes that are within your control. Try and do those little things, because the little things do add up. And if you spread awareness with other people, it's incredible how quickly things can change.
Yeah.
Because they can change. That would be my conclusion, but I may as well just say it now, Can we just go forward a little bit? Where are we? So one of the guys that was one of the talking heads was Robert Hare, consultant to the FBI on psychopaths, confirms that the corporation fits the definition perfectly. And then our lovely Michaela, I won't do the impression again, but she said, the dominant institution of our time has been created in the image of a psychopath. It's quite a big thing. Milton Friedman says, can a building have moral opinions and social responsibilities? This is what we're talking about. Can you reason with a shark? What would you like to... Is there any bits that you'd like to talk about? Because we're going to have to cherry pick, otherwise we're going to be here the rest of our lives.
Oh gosh. How
about marketing to kids? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Wow. I've got a daughter. She's 4.5 years old, and it's pretty hard work when she nags me. Yeah. It's
quite unforgivable in a way, I'd say.
What that companies with their advertising. I feel like this is more the case in America, in the United States, where on television they do have a lot of advertising that's aimed at kids. I don't actually. I'm one of those annoying people who doesn't have a TV.
No, I don't either. Actually.
You don't either.
No.
So actually, we don't spend a lot of time in front of the telly, and I don't really let my daughter's not sitting there just being babysat by the TV. I've tried to find other better things for her to do. But it's very hard though, because if you've got to cook dinner, I do need to give her something to do. So I let her watch some things sometimes on a tablet and play with a sort of educational sort of game playing app thing. But in America, I think it's much more normal to just have the TV on, and they have adverts for toys and things. And those adverts, like the woman we heard from earlier,
and food as well. Don't forget.
And food as well. They are really, really insidiously created with lots of psychological research into not just how to get the kids to want the products, but how to get the kids to nag the parents to buy the products. And that just seems so manipulative and so mean to target these kids whose brains are still developing. They still haven't developed the defense mechanisms, and they're so malleable. And so that's just really, really makes me angry and sad. That.
And again, we're not saying it's just the existence of marketing to kids, because kids are going to want things, and marketing per se is not bad. I mean, if you well, depends whether you talk about advertising or marketing. I guess that's another argument, but making people aware of things is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it's the level of sophistication. And the quote here, marketers play on kids' developmental vulnerabilities with incredibly sophisticated technology. And just one interesting point you made while you were talking, when you were saying I'm one of those annoying people that doesn't have a telly. I bet if you said to a certain amount of people, I don't let my child watch adverts, a certain amount of people are going, oh yeah, you're so clever. And that's another thing that our society, I don't know how this has happened exactly, but our society's become one where if you are aware, you're almost like a weirdo or some sort of pariah, isn't it?
Or you'll be called woke, or you'll be called a hipster or something like that. Like woke, which is a term which means that you are aware of the way things really work.
Yeah.
that's now become a term of abuse. It's like it's now being used. Like, oh, you're all these woke lefty hipsters or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, so people will call you a hipster or will call you woke just because you want to look after your kids.
Yeah. Well, truth became a dirty word as well because it was connected with 9/11 truth. But
yeah,
I would argue that there was a thing called the truth movement, and none of us really like that term. I prefer alternative media,
okay,
through podcasting and stuff. But there was a point where truth became truther, which became this weirdo just watching YouTube videos about conspiracies, which is not what it's about. It's about trying to be aware and trying to get through the limitations of mainstream media output, which is the dominant output, just as the corporation is dominant. Mainstream media output is dominant as well.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the thing is that we've all seen certain things online, certain videos about certain things which are lumped in with that. And those are the things that sort of have soured the whole situation, which it's like the Paul is dead conspiracy, where there are videos which are like absolutely appalling representations of evidence. Like they're presenting things as evidence in the least scientific and the most subjective and badly put together way, where it's like, look at these photos. Here's a photo of John and Paul standing together in 1964, and here's a photo of John and Paul standing together in 1968, and look, you can actually measure the difference in height. It's like, are you kidding? You're going to use these two grainy photos where you don't even see how much closer they are if one of them is bending down slightly, and you're going to present that as like really great evidence for the fact that Paul McCartney died? Or other things like, the flat earth conspiracy, where they find a very old map, like some antiquated map, which has presented the earth in a slightly different shape. And they say, look, this old map, this old map shows that the earth is flat. It's like, what? Just because it's old doesn't mean it's better as evidence, so those sorts of things have essentially kind of, people see that sort of thing and it really makes them angry. Not necessarily because it's challenging the status quo, but because it's just such bad content. And so people just get really furious with that sort of thing, because it's just, don't expect me to swallow that, because that's just completely insulting. But then, so that is kind of, I don't know if I should use the phrase the bad apple, but it's because that's used in this documentary by the corporate people.
Right at the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, they kind of try and dismiss the bad actions of corporations by saying, oh, it's just a few bad apples. But what I mean is that, maybe the image of alternative media has been sort of affected by some of the worst content that's put out. But anyway, what you were saying, you were making a very profound point.
I can't remember. It's so profound. I can't remember what I would make one point. Yeah, if you ever watch any like YouTube videos of people laughing about conspiracy theories, they will always target, as you were saying, the ridiculous ones like flat Earth and that. They'll never talk about, in England, they'll never talk about, say, Dr. David Kelly, the weapons inspector.
Oh yeah.
Or other ones where there was a guy called Gary Webb who investigated the CIA trafficking in drugs and apparently shot himself twice in the head or something. Not sure how that happens. Michael Hastings was a guy who I think he was killed in his car or something like that. There's so many, but they'll always target the ridiculous ones, and they'll always have this little smile on their face and everything. And it's anyway. I mean, that's something we've covered on Life and Life Only to death. Let's talk about Carlton Brown, who's the commodities trader, a black guy, talking about 9/11.
Right.
Now, my issue with Carlton was, why does he have to have this big smile on his face when he's talking about that? That was my issue. My issue was not that a commodities trader, when they hear about 9/11, their mind naturally runs to the price of gold. I might seem weird for accepting that, but if you've chosen to be in the commodities trade, and it's one of those fast-moving things, any market trading, it's everything's happening by the second. It's a bit like a journalist, and I have a journalist friend. I'm not going to name him, but he told me that because I was discussing something about, when someone gets shot or something, all the journalists crowd round them, or they'll surround the home of the family, And as soon as they come out of the house, they'll say, "Oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?" And you think, how can you be that callous? But my journalist friend said, if you choose to be a journalist, then you're almost obliged to do your job when it happens. So give me your opinion. Feel free to disagree, but I don't have so much of an issue with Carlton saying that if you choose to be a commodities trader, then when 9/11 happens, your mind is going to automatically run to what's happening to the price of gold. What do you think about that? Feel free to disagree. Give me your thoughts.
Well, yeah, I guess if you are a commodities trader and that's what you do all day, and that's what you're thinking about all the time, because it's your job of to like, how can I, I've got to be aware of the price of commodities all the time. And that when 9/11 happens, that's probably going to be what he thinks of. I mean, I wouldn't be proud. I wouldn't be proud to say it if I was him. That's maybe the issue you have with the little smile or smirk that he's got on his face.
It's a big smile. And I like to think it's an ironic, it probably is an ironic smile, but I just think it was a bit unnecessary.
Yeah. Why is he smiling? I guess he's there's a certain rush of, some certain bit of exhilaration with being so brutally honest.
Yeah, maybe
about it, that he's just like, I'm just a commodities trader, and this is what we do. So there's maybe the smile was an acknowledgement of the irony of it, that he saw a terrible thing and he thought of the price of gold. I don't know, really. I don't know what to make of that. But what's interesting is reading the study guides for the corporation documentary, the way that they filmed it. Do you know about that? Did you see that in the PDF?
I saw it, but can you explain it? Yeah.
So when we see these days, it's very common in video format to see someone looking at the camera and talking directly to the camera like this in conversation, because we get Zoom videos, which now are posted online, a bit like this one, although we're not looking directly into the camera.
I never know where to look. I'm looking into your eyes rather than
I look at you when I'm talking, and I probably should be looking at the camera. But I think that as viewers, we're getting used to watching people on Zoom. And we know that when they're looking off to the side and the other person is looking off in a different direction and not looking at us, and no one seems to be looking at each other, it's become normal, and we understand that these are the conventions of a video call now.
Yes.
But anyway, in the documentary, it was quite new at the time that the people being interviewed were just looking straight at the camera, but talking in a very natural conversational way. So the way that they did this is that the interviewer, these people were being interviewed, but they did it so that the interviewees were looking directly into the lens, but they were seeing the face of their interviewer. So what they did is they propped up a piece of glass at an angle between the camera and the interviewee. And so the glass reflected the image of the interviewer, but then through that glass, the interviewee was being filmed. So it means that what happened is that the interviewee you see their facial reactions as if they're talking to a person. They're not talking to a camera; they're talking to another person, the interviewer. And the interviewer was apparently used facial expressions and sort of nodding and other ways to elicit or maybe encourage the interviewee to have some level of emotion on their face. So it's quite a direct way of getting the interviewees to express themselves and to show their emotions on their faces when they were talking to the camera. Normally, when you talk to a camera, it's hard you don't naturally have those emotional reactions on your face because you're not seeing a person reacting to you. So they had a little trick to make sure that people could address the camera directly while also seeing the face of their interview. And I think it affected the way that it affected the footage that they got. I
think all the talking heads, they're very engaging, even if you don't like the people or what they're saying a lot of the time. Yeah, there's something about it. It's just a very, very well presented documentary, I think.
That's why, you get that woman about the woman who designed the kid nagging program. She's like, laughing and smiling and joking, because you imagine the interviewer is kind of going, yeah, really? Wow, you did that thing? Wow, that's, And so the woman is, without realizing it, she's revealing how she would naturally talk about this subject without her defenses being put up. Yeah, very cleverly
Very
made.
clever, yeah. I like that. It's great. Okay. Right, there's so many things. We're just going to have to... yeah, they talk about... I don't know if this is my note or I was quoting from it. Decades of propaganda employing psychologists. Yeah, something that I've said on the podcast. The scary thing about it is that if you test people, if you get psychologists to test people's reactions, including children, this is what they do. I found out when they bring kids in to market clothes, take pictures of kids marketing clothes, they take the opportunity to do a load of tests on them as well. They test them on colours and they've got them even sort of electrically kind of wired up so they know how their body... I mean, it's just horrendous. But the scary thing is that means that a person who you've never met, like a psychologist or a marketer, actually knows us better than we know ourselves.
Yeah.
Which is the really scary thing. And because I would say our culture, again, treats people who overanalyze things as kind of weird, or, it's another one of these things where it's like there's so many Hollywood films or TV series where the person who's sort of very thoughtful or analyzes stuff is sort of either subtly or overtly seen as a weirdo. And that's what I mean. In our culture and TV and everything, there's so many messages which are saying, don't overanalyze. Rich people are heroes. There's all these millions of messages every day. And that's why I could say with some confidence that they probably know us better than we know ourselves. So, but again, if the message is study that, folks, study that so you can be more immune to it. And so I'm not a parent, but you are, and especially for parents, it's very, very important. Don't deprive your kids, but within reason.
I hope my daughter grows up with the critical faculties where she's able to sort of realize that she's being, potentially manipulated. It's hard to say that though to a 4.5-year-old.
Course, yeah.
It's like, when you're watching Paw Patrol, that they're manipulating you. They've used psychological tactics. There's people in offices with like flowcharts and stuff, and they've worked out that if they present this to you, that you will then cry in the supermarket when I don't let you buy a tank.
But how about this, Luke? Wouldn't you be the proudest father in the world if your daughter said to you, "Daddy, is it true that we are bombarded by hundreds of bits of overt and more subtle propaganda to mould us into being certain citizens that don't question things too much"? Can you imagine how proud you'd be? I could see, your face would just be, oh, my daughter.
I'd say, my God, have you been listening to Life and Life Only by Antony Rotunno by any chance? Maybe I left my podcast out running in the bedroom by my mistake. She fell asleep and your entire back catalogue was playing all night.
Oh,
and she woke up and saying, "Daddy, apparently we're all just being bred in pods to feed the corporate machine."
Daddy, was the Vietnam War really just imperialist bullshit? That's episode. I can't remember the number of the episode. Anyway,
was that the name of the episode?
No, it was Douglas Valentine. He wrote a couple of amazing books. One called The Phoenix Program and one called The CIA as Organized Crime. And that was a good interview. Anyway, where the hell are we? So we get stuff like Celebration, Florida is a planned town that's basically owned by Disney or sort of sponsored by Disney. We get the 2 university students. This is interesting. 2 university students who are sort of corporate sponsored. Very interesting. One of them appears in the new corporation, the sequel, and he's kind of seen the light. And he talks about how he was manipulated in the first one. Yeah.
Those 2 university students. Yeah. So this is extraordinary. It's a sort of, I feel like it's the only thing that could happen in America, but who knows these days, the way things are going. But there's 2 university students who are like proudly on like daytime TV in America. And it's basically, we decided to be walking billboards for companies to sponsor us so that, to pay for our university education. And they said that on the TV show, and the audience goes, "Way!"
Yeah, of course.
They'll laugh and cheer, like, "Yay!" Yeah. Probably because it says on the screen in front of the audience, "Laugh and cheer now." But they all clap their hands to celebrate the fact that these kids are basically selling their bodies. Well, their clothes. I don't know how they were sponsored. How the hell does that work?
Yeah, I'm never sure about that. It's the same with advertising dollars. I'm never sure who's paying who, like who's getting the benefit. It's never totally clear to me.
I think it was like almost a story that was a self-perpetuating story, in the sense that the kids said, all right, we will wear your corporate logos on our clothes if you pay us for it. And that got into the news. And the fact that it was in the news and they were on TV meant that the corporations did then give them money to put the fact that they were doing it became a story which allowed the sponsorship to actually happen.
That was my understanding. That was that they went on TV and said nice things about the sponsor, but then I was wondering, how did they get on TV? So it's obviously been organized so it becomes a story, as you said, that goes on TV. I think that's how it worked.
It's like maybe someone from the company said, let's go to the university campus and find the two coolest, like most popular kids, and then we'll set up this situation where we'll create a story where they are, and we'll give this opportunity to the news networks. They'll say, hey, we've got a great story for you. Like these two handsome looking college kids are going to have decided to sponsor to open themselves up for sponsorship. They're going to be walking billboards for the companies. This is quite fun, isn't it? And they're good looking kids, and they've got nice smiles, and the companies like the news station or the TV station is like, okay, I think we can run this story. And so bingo, the plan works. And of course, because they're on the TV, the corporation's getting all of their promotional, their advertising in there. Yeah, but that's weird.
Or maybe the corporation owns the news. That could be another.
I don't know, but at least there's like all these opportunities for like we've got a possible story for you, and it sort of works for everyone. All three people, the lads are getting their money, the TV station get their story, and the corporation get their name out there. So it sort of seems to work for everyone. But in the sequel, the 2020 sequel, one of those students is actually in it, is he?
Yeah, I don't remember much about it because I've only seen the sequel once, but the idea was that he talks about his experience in the first one. He realizes, I wasn't doing the right thing, and he was quite affected by the documentary as a whole, not just his bit.
Right. So he kind of saw the light sort of thing.
Yeah, I actually watched this film and the sequel back to back one Sunday. And when I finally decided not to slit my wrists, I reflected on it, and it was a pretty heavy journey. But I will watch the second one. Perhaps in the future we could review that as well. But I think we'll leave it a bit of time to psychologically recover from this, basically.
Yeah,
not the conversation. I mean the documentary.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need time to. I need to seriously distance myself from all this after we finish this conversation.
Yeah, I think maybe just sort of like going for a nice walk in the park, listening to Sergeant Pepper or something, or just a bit of Aphex Twin or Brian Eno sort of ambient music, and I was having a nice cup of tea in a dark room, and having a lie down maybe necessary. What about the Pfizer episode, which I found interesting? So without going into the whole pharmaceuticals thing, but the Pfizer, so the idea that there is a town or a street that Pfizer had, I don't quite know the arrangement really, but they were. I didn't
understand what that guy was doing, to be perfectly honest.
Well, so
what was he doing?
I think it's this that so Pfizer had essentially paid for an area of, is it Flushing? It was in Flushing,
New York, right? Yeah.
It was in New York. It's an area near New York. It's just, I remember that because whenever I see the word Flushing or the place Flushing, I think of the Rutles and Bill Murray. The scene is here in Flushing. The whole world's eyes are on Flushing.
I think of tennis because that's where they have the US Open, isn't it?
Flushing Meadows.
Flushing Meadows, yeah.
Anyway, so I think it's quite a poor part of New York, I think. And so Pfizer had invested lots of money in a couple of streets there, and they'd redone it, and the streets looked all nice and clean, and they were talking about that. So there was a guy for Pfizer who was there in the streets, kind of with a big smile on his face, that kind of everything's positive, and look at the great things that Pfizer have done here. And fair enough, like the street did look nice, and but he was just really too chirpy and too positive, and
I'm
like,
Tom from Pfizer. Every time
I'm Tom from Pfizer, and we're here in the streets of Flushing, as like sort of guys run past him that maybe someone who's just stolen a handbag is like running past him, like, here we are in Flushing. Oh, this guy sure is in a hurry, you know. And then he kind of grabs a couple of people. He's like, so are you happy with what Pfizer have done here? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess it's kind of good. And he's like, great, you see, everyone's really happy. And then he goes down.
What are they going to say otherwise? They're not going to go, no, I hate it, are they, on camera?
Yeah, he's almost like forcing them to kind of, well, he's not forcing them. He's just doing that sort of thing that street salesmen do, which is where they're like super positive and you've got no choice but to kind of go along with it. And then
they're just being nice. You know, they're just being average people. They're being nice. Yeah.
They're just being nice. So it's not exactly the most reliable focus group feedback of how Pfizer have been involved in the town. Although it did look nice. I'm sure they'd improved it in many ways. But it was just funny that he was trying to put a big positive sheen on things so obviously. And then he goes down into the subway and he says, look, you know, we paid for these new security doors so people can't go through the doors, jump through the doors anymore. Fine. And then he's saying, we've made the station is much safer now. And he's talking about these information booths where you can press a button on the wall and you can talk into a sort of a microphone thing. And he's basically saying that we've put these things in so that if anyone is getting attacked on the station platform, they can call and they can get help. And he even says, you know, you'll be put through to, you know, someone in an office somewhere, and that person will call the station security who'll come down. And he's like saying, you know, we're going to press the button, and he presses the button and he says, hi, this is, you know, Tom Jackson. Tom Jackson speaking, and he gets no reply. And you can see slight, maybe like sweat.
His face just falls for a second.
Just a second, his face drops, and maybe the beads of sweat start to appear on his forehead. And he's like, I'm sure he'll reply to us in a minute. Anyway, and then he keeps going, and no reply. And so he goes, I think maybe we'll try this one over here. And they keep the cameras going as he tries to get a response from the security guy and fails again. And I was just thinking, all right, so when if you've been stabbed on the platform, and how many times do you have to press that button before you get any help? But it's a tricky one, that, because I'm sure that they did improve the station and the street, but it was just the manner with which Tom, or whatever his name was sort of trying to really upsell everything. It was real neat and awesome. Just seemed so fake.
Yeah, and if I can just make this point, viewers, listeners, no hate, please. Pfizer, corporate, as we know now, legally mandated to put money above everything else. Pfizer also sponsors the news. There's a few people have put YouTube videos and stuff. The news sponsored by Pfizer.
Really?
Yes. I'm just saying, that's all I'm going to say. Nothing else. But yeah, Tom and his smile. I mean, I'm just wondering, like, who the hell would be taken in by that? But who knows? I'm sure he's got lots of other sales patter that would work on all of us. I don't know.
It's almost like it's a kind of choice. It's sort of when Tom is smiling at you and being all positive, either you go along with it because you're nice, or to not go along with it and to say, "Oh, come on, Tom, you know,
I'm not buying it.
I'm not buying this, Tom. Come on, like, really?" Then you're going to have to be a very nasty person, and you're going to come across as very, very sort of mean, and you don't want to be mean to Tom. No one wants to be mean to anyone.
And also, I think people are very entranced by cameras as well. And I mean, I think I've had this before. I was on camera just very briefly years and years ago when I lived in London. They were just asking for opinions on things. And the first time when you realise you're on camera, it does throw you. So the idea that someone who's never been on camera is going to say something really negative to this corporate CEO or whatever he is, chairman, or, you know, it's unlikely, isn't it? So it's sort of playing on this thing of just people being nice, you know. What do you think of this? It's great, yeah.
You see, people think it's great.
Yeah, because in reality, they probably just don't care. It's just like, I'll just say it's nice, and then this guy's going to leave me alone, probably. It's that element as well.
Again, going back to the Ruttles, there's that scene where Eric Idle's presenter guy is in the street, and he's like, well, let's see the lasting impact of the Ruttles.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going down the street and he picks on a woman. He's like, you know, what do you think of the Ruttles? He's like, don't really care, really. And no, she goes, I've never heard of them. It's like, what, really? You've never heard of the Ruttles? No, I don't know who they are. And he's like, really? You've never heard of the Ruttles? Tell me about the Ruttles. Who are the Ruttles? That's it. Yeah. Who are the Ruttles?
Yeah.
And he sort of bullies her, and eventually she grabs the microphone off him and goes, "Oh, okay." And in about 2 minutes, she gives the complete history of the Ruttles in one long diatribe, and then she hands the microphone back to him and goes, "There you go. Are you happy?" and storms off down the street.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's just it's a comedic example of this sort of just hammering people to say what seems so obvious. You know, oh, do you think Jeff Bezos is great? Come on, you think he's great, don't you? You think he's great? Think of all those Amazon packages. Oh shit, said the name.
Oh, you did it. Beep.
I'll cut it out the audio. Think of all those packages that arrive and all the convenience, and someone goes, well, yeah, it's all right. Yeah, will you just basically just leave me alone now? It's that kind of thing.
It's quite tricky to get an objective like comment from someone in the street, though, because I did a few years ago when I first started doing my podcast, which is, just in case any of your listeners don't know, it's a podcast for learners of English. Adult learners of English around the world. And I did these videos where I went into the center of London and I just wanted to get people in the street and just get samples of spoken English from them, like natural spoken English. And so what I wanted was a range of different comments about what it's like to live in London. And I did also things about, what do you think of the royal family? And I really did not want to make them say a certain thing. You know, I didn't want to say, so how great is it to live in, tell me how great London is, or how much you love the royal family. Yeah. And so I had to be quite careful as like, so what are the good and bad things about living in London? Good or bad things? And because what happens is, and if you say, tell me about living in London and tell me about the good things and the bad things. And if you say it like that and the bad things, then it's obvious that you just want them to say bad things. Yeah. So I end up saying, so good things, good things, but good things, bad things. You kind of like, you don't want to influence them too much. And it's the same with my daughter, where I'll say, for example, what do you prefer, pizza or pasta? And she goes, pasta. And then I'll ask her the same question. What do you prefer? Do you prefer pasta or pizza? And she'll go, pizza. She does that less and less as she's growing older, but there was definitely a period where just like you give her two options, that every single time the second option would be the thing that she would pick. So it's quite difficult. Adults are kind of similar. It's difficult to kind of ask a question without imposing some kind of intrinsic bias in the question.
Definitely, yeah.
Yep.
Very interesting. All right. There's about 3 more things I'd like to cover, which are quite important. So let's talk about the bovine milk scandal. So I'll just set it up. So we've got Steve Wilson and Jane Achbar. They went to work they said Fox TV, which presumably is Fox News. I don't know. They were told you can do what you want, ask tough questions. They immediately realized that they put together a cheesy ad called The Investigators. And I put in my notes, just already looks like a TV show, and it's really cheesy. So they're probably thinking, oh, blimey. Anyway, basically, the crux of it, they found most of the milk in Florida and even around the country was adulterated with the effects of bovine growth hormone. And I don't know if were we on mic when you were talking about like images of animals? I was just like, couldn't even watch it.
Yeah.
The company convinced the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, that it was safe, and the government rubber stamped it. Obviously, it's not all that simple, but it went through certain channels. But what was interesting was all the tactics they used to try and either kill the story or dilute it to the point where there was almost nothing there, using all this euphemistic language. So that was an interesting process. So there's a telling quote from, I think it's the general manager of Fox. We just paid $3 billion for these TV stations. The news is what we say it is. And that's a direct quote. I mean, that's pretty telling.
Yeah, there was some quite shady moments where they were So the people responsible for the documentary, there was a guy and a woman. I can find out their names. You may have just said them, actually.
Yeah, Steve Wilson and Jane Akre, A-K-R-E. I'm not sure you pronounce that.
Yeah.
Steve and Jane, let's call them.
So Steve was talking about how he was approached by, who was it? Was it an executive from Fox, or was it from the corporate sponsor?
I can't remember. They say a name, don't they? It's like Dave or something. That was quite funny when they said, so a guy comes up to us. I think his name's Dave. And he says, but they're definitely the general manager asked them to make changes. And essentially the lawyers get involved, don't they? And it sort of circles back. We mentioned right at the beginning about the lawyers.
Yeah. And they end up actually, I think the corporate sponsor, I think this is right. The corporate sponsor is the one who actually approaches them and tries to persuade them to drop the story. And it's interesting. It's quite shady that he comes first, quite sort of, it comes in stages, and it's like goes from a friendly offer of like, tell you what, or it starts with pressure. And then when they say, no, we're still going to run the story, then they go away and they come back with like a friendly offer.
That's it.
Which then turns into an outright threat.
Yes.
And it's just like these different stages, and then ultimately you get down to the brass tacks of it, which is like, yeah, we control the news. You will say what we tell you to say. Like, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? But you're right. Another absolutely seminal book that I would really encourage anyone to read is John Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And I mean, that's based on fact. Okay, taking him at his word, of course, but he talks about how US corporations go into third world countries and basically encourage the leader to essentially sell out their country. So the leader is taken care of. I think Marcos in the Philippines is a good example. And to get these sort of infrastructure contracts, a lot of the time for work that's never actually going to be done, but it's just to do with plundering third world countries. And John Perkins said, yeah, they send in the sort of charming guy with a smile, then they send in what they call the jackals, who are, obviously the heavies. And then eventually, in the end, they even declare war. That's the final, it's the final thing. But it's like this thing about these approaches, and it's almost like a good cop, bad cop, but the good cop doesn't appear at the same time. The good cop comes in, gets rejected, then the bad cop arrives. And
sometimes it's the same person who just takes a different approach. And someone who's initially quite friendly can turn quite menacing. And I suppose for a journalist in that situation, you might suddenly be concerned for your life or something. Yeah. You might those thoughts might go.
Life, of course.
Yeah, those thoughts might flash through your mind where you start to think, wait a minute, well, I'm really dangerous to these people now because I've got this story, and wow, it's suddenly very scary in a kind of a movie, like Michael Clayton or something like that.
Yeah. Also the smiling assassin almost,
Yeah.
He comes in, he's got a gun in his pocket and a big smile, that kind of thing. It would throw you off, yeah. I'll just give you a very, very potted version of what happened. So they were offered hush money, the rest of the year's salary, not to talk about the story or anything that happened. Steve and Jane wouldn't sign the letter, so the story got rewritten 83 times. 83 times over a period, I think it was about 8 months. They filed a whistleblower claim that took 2 to 3 years to get processed. They won. Fox appealed, with 5 major news corporations supporting them. And essentially that amounts to most of the news, most of the suppliers of the news. And the upshot was, the sort of secret bit of it is that falsifying news isn't actually against the law. So it was because they use all this euphemistic language, they take out the word cancer, for example, and it gets diluted to the fact. It's almost like if you imagine like a drink of something and you add so much water that in the end you can't taste the original drink.
Yeah.
It's like that.
I mean, those news networks, a lot of them were news corporation networks, right?
That's it.
And again, this is an American story, although I'm sure it doesn't only happen in America, but it is very much an American thing where those news networks are like just totally corporate controlled things. I mean, like Fox. I'm amazed it's got any legitimacy at all. But I don't know what the relationship is with the other networks. And then,
could they even be in collusion, even though one of them's supposed to be left and one's supposed to be right? Whatever that means anymore. But
I don't know. That's
we don't
speculation.
know,
it's just speculation, I suppose. But that certain News Corporation and Rupert Murdoch and that whole massive company it's not set up for objective news reporting. They're the ones who own the Sun and various other outlets, Sky even. So that basically the commercialization of news is not good for the truth.
Yes,
ultimately.
And corporate news, I mean, that's very interesting. We're talking about corporation that's been diagnosed to be this thing, and the news providers. I'm not saying it's all bullshit. I'm not saying nothing is true. Just saying it's there to make money. I'm sorry, but
yeah, I think maybe now is the time to talk about some of the solutions again. I mean, we've kind of talked about the more positive side of like disseminating the information and trying not to normalize all these sorts of things. But also it's about the rule of law, isn't it? And the reason that the corporation is able to operate in this way is because of its legal structure and its legal parameters. And so surely the way to try and check these things is for the rule of law to maintain strength. I mean, that Fox story example, it went to the Supreme Court. There were certain laws that they were able to invoke in order to defend themselves, the journalists. So thank goodness for the rule of law in that regard, and the fact that there are ways to use law to defend the truth and so on. And I just hope that the rule of law is upheld and is protected. And that's a worrying thing when something like the Supreme Court, if that gets compromised, and so on, you know what I mean? That we need lawyers, we need people to try to put legal structures in place to try and going back to the RoboCop analogy, which is that, as we know, RoboCop basically has these directives. Well, what are the 4 directives? I can't remember. Keep the peace.
So long since I've seen
keep the peace. Serve the company. Yeah. And then there's a directive. A crucial thing is one of his directives is removed, which is, I think, serve the public. And because that directive is removed, he can't kill the CEO, the evil bad guy. He can't kill him because he works for him. It's some directive where he can't get the bad guy because he works for the bad guy, and he tries and he can't do it.
Oh, that's it.
Because beep, 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 you're not allowed. It's in your programming.
So they fire him, so then he can shoot him.
He says, Dick, I've got news for you. You're fired. And RoboCop's like, thanks or something. And he shoots him. But the point I'm making is that maybe, I don't know. I mean, who am I to know? I mean, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but that maybe we need to just try and make sure that there are regulations and rules and laws that try and protect the world.
Well, let's make the point that I'm in England, you're in France. We've been talking about the USA. This is obviously Canadian made. None of those countries would ever want to identify themselves as some sort of dictatorship or autocratic. You could argue that perhaps we don't have as many rights as we think we have, but there's always going to be something in place, like legally, because what Britain, France, USA, the last thing they'd ever want to be known as or identified as countries where people don't have rights. We're just bombarded with the idea that we've got lots of rights, and obviously in comparison to other places we do. But
these days, the United Kingdom, I mean, our current government seem to be quite happy to strip away people's rights and be proudly do it. Human rights human rights are on the menu. It's like, right, which ones do we want to strike off today? That seems to be what a lot of our current government is about, is that like the European Court of Human Rights is there to arguably to protect workers' rights and stuff. And the current government are like, no, and they dress it up as if they are doing it for what? For patriotic reasons. Yeah, let's remove everyone's workers' rights. Why? Because we love Britain. Like, that makes no sense.
No,
so
absolutely.
I think we're dangerously close to just, I don't know why, stripping away a lot of those rights.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're talking at cross purposes a little bit there, because you're anyway.
No, I'm just trying to make the point that in what presents itself as a democracy, they always are going to have checks and balances, I think. You're absolutely right, though, subtly, what's happening in England, it's gradually being worn away, but they will be voted out eventually, because that's just how things go.
I hope so. I really do. And I hope that it doesn't get to the point where people get so fed up with the political system and so cynical about it that they just never vote. Because if, people don't vote, then all that happens is the people who do vote will vote in, some gang, some gang of corrupt weirdos, which is kind of what we've got right now. So, it's a dangerous thing when you criticize the system and you say that this is all messed up. The danger is that you also kind of cause people to just reject the system completely, and then it just topples over into something much worse. So, we've got to maintain that positivity and sort of say, we do still have power. As you said, we still have the power to make a difference. And so, I hope people still vote, and that they don't completely abandon the political system as it is now, because that could cause a vacuum, and that vacuum could be filled by something potentially worse.
Yeah, and circling back to what I said right at the beginning about Reagan, this very clever political campaign slogan, "Government is the problem," in brackets, the bit he didn't say, so let's deregulate and give the corporations, because we don't have any, well, we do have power, we can vote with our dollar, yes, but at least having a government there, even if they do seem to just ride roughshod, certainly at the moment, in theory at least, we do have some control, whereas a sort of corporate behemoth, a Godzilla figure, a shark, whatever you want to call it, we have less. Can we bring this to a conclusion? The only two things I wanted to name check, basically, because they were quite interesting parts, was the thing about, hang on a sec, it was in Bolivia, wasn't it? Let me get this right. Cochabamba, third biggest city, and the Bechtel Corporation of San Francisco got control, and they privatized the water, and they're actually stopping poor people catching rainwater, which, I mean, just there's a clip of Michael Moore in his documentary saying, when is it enough? When is it enough control? And they talk about, I'm not going to depress the viewers, talking about air, water, this idea of there's no commons anymore. Yeah. And what happened to those protesters in Bolivia? I mean, brain injuries. They were talking about them losing limbs. I don't exactly
One of them got shot and killed.
One of them got shot and killed, but they talk about losing arms and legs. I don't know how that happened, but
yeah, I suppose when you get the police who are potentially, not the most, sometimes the police can be quite heavy-handed, and when it's like, okay, go and stop these protesters. Yeah. Some of those people will be like, oh, you mean what, break their arms and legs? No, just stop them. Yeah. And they'll just use it as an excuse to go and beat people up and maybe do, horrible things to them and stuff. Yeah. So,
because also when people when they want to make an example of someone, that when they want to send a message, that's when they will give the harshest punishment.
Right.
I mean, whether or not you believe the Bible story, the story of Jesus, the whole point of ostensibly the reason he had such a horrible, torturous death was they want to make a point. Can't have people going around saying that they're messiahs. I mean,
we can't have the meek inheriting the earth.
Yeah. Oh, the meek.
Blessed are the cheesemakers, he said.
I'm glad they're getting a bit. They've had a terrible time.
The poor meek.
Yeah, they've had a terrible time. And then the other bit was Smedley Butler. If you've ever read War is a Racket, I did a podcast about it. It's a very short book. It's worth your time reading it, because it was written by one of the most decorated Marines ever. So it's not a conspiracy theorist looking on YouTube. This is
Yeah.
a guy in, I think it was written in either the 20s or the 30s, but they talk about the business plot. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to quote Smedley Butler. Here we go. I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service, and during that period I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business, Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I won't read all of it, just a couple of examples. I helped make Mexico and especially Tampico safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues. And then it goes on. I won't go through all of it, but talking about war is a racket, and a racket for your any non-native speakers in your audience is a sort of dishonest business, isn't it? It's a corrupt business,
like a bit of organized crime. It's what organized criminals do, where they extort money and they control things by force and threat of physical violence or the delivery of physical violence. What's that? I've got delivery for you. What is it? Physical violence. Yes. War is a racket.
Yeah, War is a Racket. Yeah, very kind of seminal book. And like I say, in the Life and Life Only archive, you'll find did a podcast about it. I read it and it was kind of interjecting. This is not in the documentary, but have you seen the clip of Rutger Bregman at Davos? Have you seen that guy? He's a Dutch historian.
No.
We'll put it in the show notes, and in fact, on the audio version, maybe I'll put a clip in now. But it's so funny. He got invited to Davos. He's a Dutch, I think he's a historian. And he just cut through the crap in such a fantastic way.
I like the way the Dutch do often. Just get straight to the point. Yeah.
Very direct. Yeah. I'll play the clip anyway, but I'm going to tell you for the video audience. He basically says, I've been at Davos for a couple of days and my mind is like completely blown. He said, it's like I'm at a firefighters conference and no one's talking about water because no one's talking about the rich not paying their fair share of taxes. And he says, basically everything else here is bullshit. But people cut it. You don't cut to the reaction, but people smile, maybe ironically, maybe not. Maybe some of the people at Davos do realize that a lot of it's bullshit and it's just a kind of circle jerk for rich people. And they get all the best chefs flown in, and obviously they burn all kinds of carbon flying in on private jets. I mean, it's just a joke, but that clip for the audio version will tell you. And that's when, in fact, there's a woman talking about the workers in the US factory having to wear diapers, which I already mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
There were some shots of protesters, and I just wanted to... There were a couple of signs I liked. One of them said, "Bow your heads. The corporations will now lead us in prayer." So relating them to sort of gods. Another one was, "I am a trade barrier," which is relating to free trade agreements. Again, look up free trade, free for who. And then another person has a barcode over their mouth, if you remember that. That's become quite a well-known thing. And then we get a lady called Vandana Shiva, and who had an Indian friend actually when I lived in Italy, and she said Vandana Shiva is a bit of a legend in India. She's kind of a very strong woman, and she was talking about how there were these salt laws in India when the British were in control. And Gandhi is a famous video. Gandhi goes to the beach and just kind of pours a load of salt out or something and says, this comes from God, or this is a natural thing, because they were putting taxes on it, things like that. There's so much more, but I think we'll more or less leave it there. Do you want to give it like a closing statement? What have we learned and what could people do maybe?
Well, I think that the documentary is definitely worth a watch. It's eye-opening stuff. It can be hard to keep your eyes open during some of it. I don't mean it makes you fall asleep. I just mean it's hard not to cover your eyes at some of the moments in it. But I think that overall it's important to see it. And it's a very, very well made documentary. And I think that, when things are well made and when things are clearly intelligent, serious pieces of work, that there's a lot of value to seeing them. So I'd recommend the documentary. And I think it's also important for people to keep these things in mind. It might seem a bit hard, but I think it's still valuable. And I haven't seen the new one, but I will watch it. and then I'll have a nice lie down and a cup of tea.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, the other thing, what I said earlier about spreading awareness, planting seeds, just talking to people. It doesn't cost you anything to talk to people about this. And I saw an amazing stat. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me, but it's something like if 7 people each told 7 people something, the same bit of information, that would be 49. If those 49 each told 7 people, and within, I think it's like 10 transactions, that message has spread to millions, the whole population of America, because it was an American who was talking, which is 300 million. That's all it takes for certain things. So, I mean, I was on a podcast in like 2014, my friend Julian, the Mind Renewed, and we were talking about changing the discourse, about how there's a tendency when people are conversing that it's almost as a comfort thing. You talk about very superficial things, but unfortunately, sometimes that just continues all the time, and you find like so many of your conversations are superficial. So without getting heavy, without sort of freaking people out, I've got this platform of teaching and life coaching and podcasting. I'm very lucky, and you've got the platform as well. But just in daily life, just plant little seeds with people, and it's amazing how quickly stuff spreads. And like I say, I won't spoil it for people who are going to watch the documentary, but the last sort of 10, 20 minutes, they do try and end on a hopeful note. And they're saying that this corporate behemoth, it's not as strong as it thinks it is. It's like the scary boss that I was saying earlier.
Yes.
It's not as powerful as the power that we give it. And
the last couple of paragraphs on this worksheet, maybe I can just read those things out.
Yeah, go for it.
Might be quite a good ending to this. So here are some statements by the filmmakers about what they wanted to achieve with the film. So it says, my overriding objective in making the corporation was to challenge conventional wisdom about the role of the corporation in society, to make the commonplace seem strange, to alienate viewers from the normalcy of the dominant culture, allowing them to gain a critical distance on the conventions and the corporate culture that envelop us all. One of my goals was for viewers to ask questions about this strange thing, the corporation, and I hope that people walk away empowered and motivated to do something. And the final thing is this: a great social critic, Karl Marx, said that understanding the world is the first step towards changing it. We've taken an institution that's been reified, and what we've done in this project is to say that it's not the case. It's an institution that we've created. And then to add to that, if we've created it, then I guess we can change it. There you go.
Yeah, very good, nice. Something we didn't do at the beginning. I'll probably edit this into the audio. Could you just tell us about your podcast? I should have done it at the beginning, but we could do it at the end as well. Just go for it.
So I actually do a podcast for learners of English around the world. It's for adults. So I'm an English language teacher. I'm a TEFL teacher. And I know that lots of people think that just means someone who has a gap year and goes off on holiday and shows some colors to a group of 3 children sitting on the floor. Red, green, blue. Great. Now I go to the beach. It's not exactly like that. It's some of
us are real teachers even.
Yeah. So I teach English to adults, and my podcast is basically a chance. The idea is that I want to let my listeners listen to English more, listen to it more regularly, and listen to it for longer periods of time. The idea is that it helps them with their English ultimately, rather than just listening to the usual sorts of scripted dialogues that you get in the English course books. I always wanted to present just a sort of more natural form of English, and the way I try to make it work is to just talk about anything. I'm up for talking about anything, and I want to make it interesting to listen to, and I want it to be engaging and funny. That's the idea. And so I'll talk about all sorts of things. I also do stand-up comedy, and so I try to put the spirit of stand-up into what I do as well. So
fantastic.
There you go.
Yeah, I feel like in your podcast you do what I try and do in my English classes, and maybe you do the same, which is to sort of teach English, but then hopefully teach other things at the same time, or engage in discussions. And what sort of levels are your students? Do they go from every level?
You mean my students in
your extra English teaching, not your podcast.
In my classrooms? Yeah, I teach all the different levels. But in the last couple of years, I've been given, because I don't really choose my classes; they're given to me at the school I work in. So I've been teaching intermediate, upper intermediate, and advanced level students most of the time. But then there are times when I teach the elementary level learners and stuff like that. But I suppose to make the lessons really engaging and interesting, you do have to add in a bit of real life in there too. And it sort of, I think, brings something extra to a lesson when it's not just about the language, but obviously language is there to communicate ideas, right? And to engage people sort of emotionally and intellectually. That's what communication is for, is to transmit ideas. So I always try and include that in my lessons as much as possible. It's not just about the mechanics of the language, but about the sort of more human, the human sort of experience of using language to communicate messages. So I always try and humanize my lessons as much as possible and make them communicative and try and put humor into them and stuff like that.
Oh, fantastic. All right, that's great. And for your audience, so my podcast is Life and Life Only. I've got 3 podcasts, and I'll just name them because I feel like they've all weirdly melded into one because there's a lot of crossover. So obviously my most high-profile one is Glass Onion on John Lennon, which, as it stands, I think is the only John Lennon specialist podcast. I'm very happy about that. I wouldn't encourage anyone else to start one. Just be honest.
Anthony's done it all, everyone.
Of honesty. Yeah, and then I'd say the second that I probably pay the most attention to, no, that doesn't make any sense. Also, Life Only, which is the one that we're on right now. It's a kind of a mixture of inner and outer truth. So the inner is more self-development. Obviously, I incorporate life coaching in there as well. And then the outer is stuff like this, really. This kind of goes with the outer truth side of it, the corporation and alternative media, that kind of thing. And then I've got one called Film Gold, which is just films, and you were on fairly recently. We did Monty Python, The Holy Grail. So
yeah, that was great fun.
Just thanks for doing this, and I think we've added a bit of humour in there, and there'll be an audio version which will probably come out in a month's time, which will probably be a bit tighter. This is going out raw, right?
Yeah, we're going to probably just publish this raw, but then we'll be able to edit the audio version. Thanks for the invitation, Anthony. Thanks for inviting me on, and thanks for considering me as a guest on Life and Life Only. And it's been really great to talk about such big things. I mean, I will, as I said, talk about everything, and often I'll just be silly and talk about stupid stuff like, I don't know, whatever. I don't know what I've been talking about recently, but I'll just make up a load of nonsense about nothing in particular, just for fun. But today was like, serious stuff. But that's good. That's good too. It's nice to have a chance to talk in really meaningful terms. So thanks for the invitation.
You're very welcome. Yeah. And you're 2/3 of the way of doing the hat trick. No one's been on all 3 of my podcasts yet. So you just got to get yourself on Glass Onion.
God, how can I get on the Glass Onion podcast? Yeah. What could I talk? What could I add to that? I might be wrong there, because you said quite kindly that when I was on your show, I could use the audio, the describing John Lennon, and we did a massively long conversation, didn't we? So, yeah, we did. We actually did, I think, a 4-part episode about John Lennon, but also we did 2 episodes about how to describing John Lennon. It was actually a bit of language, so some adjectives, descriptive adjectives for describing John Lennon's personality. So yeah, I guess if you use those, then I will end up on Glass Onion.
I will eventually, and you will be on there. Yeah.
I sent in a listener question as well to Glass Onion, which you did read out. So in a way, I've kind of been on without really being on. You read out the question, so so maybe I've been on. All right, cool. Well, great hat trick. Brilliant.
Anyway, so that's it. Thanks very much, and thanks to everyone for watching. Oh God, Alan Partridge again. Watching / listening. So to all the viewers / listeners, thanks for. You know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
All right, that's it, guys.
Cheers.
Goodbye for now.